Deep within the ancient, humidity-choked jungles of Siang, there lived a man named Badang, whose existence was a daily battle against the unforgiving elements of the wild. He was not a man of great stature. His frame was lean and weathered by the sun, his hands calloused from years of clearing brush and hauling timber for a pittance. Every morning, before the first light of dawn could pierce the dense canopy, Badang would set out toward the river, his heart heavy with the weight of poverty. His only hope for survival lay in his bamboo fish traps, simple devices he had crafted with care and placed in the secret, swirling eddies of the stream. But a darkness had begun to haunt his labor. For many days he arrived to find his traps smashed and the prized fish gone, leaving only scales and mystery behind. "Who mocks my hunger?" he whispered to the shadows, his voice cracking with the frustration of a man who had nothing left to lose. The theft was not clean. It was savage, as if some wild beast or cruel spirit was intentionally toyed with his very means of staying alive. Driven by a desperate resolve, Badang decided that he would no longer be the victim of this invisible thief, and he prepared to face whatever lurked in the dark. He spent the afternoon sharpening a simple iron parang, the rhythmic scraping of stone against metal echoing like a heartbeat through his small, lonely hut. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold, Badang took his position behind the thick, twisted roots of a banyan tree. The jungle at night was a different world. It's filled with the clicks of insects and the distant, territorial roars of predators that ruled the shadows. Hours passed, and the damp cold of the riverbank began to seep into his bones. But Badang remained as still as the stones beneath him, his eyes fixed on the water. Suddenly, the surface of the river broke with a sickening wet sound, and a figure emerged that made the blood in Badang's veins turn to ice. It was the Buddha, a water demon of legend, its skin the color of stagnant moss, and its hair a tangled mess of river weeds and rotted silk. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural, sickly yellow light, and its teeth were like jagged shards of flint, dripping with the remains of Badang's stolen harvest. The creature moved with a grotesque, jerky grace, feasting on the raw fish with a hunger that seemed bottomless and ancient. A surge of primal fury overcame Badang's fear. This monster was the reason his stomach ached, and his life was a cycle of misery. With a roar that startled the sleeping birds, he lunged from his hiding place, his parang flashing in the moonlight like a silver streak of lightning. The demon hissed, a sound like steam escaping a boiling pot, and the two collided in the mud, a desperate struggle between mortal man and immortal curse. They thrashed in the shallows, the water turning murky with silt, as Badang used every ounce of his labor-hardened strength to pin the creature down. To his shock, his grip held. Perhaps the demon was weakened by its gluttony, or perhaps the sheer will of a desperate man was a force the spirit hadn't expected. Badang pressed the edge of his blade against the demon's throat, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he stared into those terrifying glowing eyes. "Give me back my life, monster!" Badang screamed, his knuckles white around the hilt of his weapon, ready to deliver the final blow. The Buddha let out a gurgling plea, its voice sounding like the crunching of dry leaves. "Spare me, O son of the earth, and I shall grant you a wish beyond your dreams." Badang hesitated, his mind racing through the possibilities. He could ask for gold, for land, or for the love of a beautiful queen. But he looked at his thin arms and thought of the bullies in the village and the heavy logs that always seemed too large for him to carry. "I want strength," Badang declared, his voice ringing with a new dangerous authority. "I want to be the strongest man in all the kingdoms of the world." The demon's mouth twisted into a horrific grin. "Strength you shall have, but the price is the consumption of my own essence, the source of my power." The creature regurgitated a foul, shimmering mass of half-digested spirit matter, a substance that smelled of ancient decay and forbidden magic. Disgust threatened to overwhelm him, but Badang closed his eyes and forced the bitter, burning sludge down his throat, feeling it sear his insides. Instantly, his body was racked with agony. He felt his bones breaking and resetting, his muscles expanding until his skin felt like it would burst. He grew in stature, his shoulders broadening like the trunks of the great teak trees, and a raw electric energy began to pulse through his very marrow. When the pain finally subsided, Badang stood up, no longer a frail laborer but a titan of flesh and bone, his presence radiating a terrifying power. The Buddha vanished back into the depths with a mocking laugh that echoed in the mist, leaving Badang alone with his new, heavy gift. To test himself, he approached a massive boulder nearby. He reached out and lifted it above his head as if it were a mere pebble, his breath steady. He threw the stone into the forest, watching as it flattened a path through the dense vegetation, and he knew his life would never be the same. Word of the strongman of Sayong spread like a wildfire across the Malayan peninsula, reaching the ears of traders, travelers, and eventually royalty. The Sultan of Singapura, a man who valued power and prestige above all else, sent a grand envoy to summon Badang to his court. Badang arrived in the city not as a servant, but as a marvel, with crowds of thousands lining the streets just to witness the man who could uproot trees. The Sultan sat upon his golden throne and looked down at Badang. "They say you are a god in human form. Show me that this is more than just peasant gossip." Badang was led to the palace courtyard where 40 of the Sultan's strongest soldiers were waiting, holding a thick, iron-bound chain. He told them to bind him, and as the soldiers tightened the links around his torso, the crowd held its breath in a collective moment of tension. With a single sharp exhale, Badang flexed his chest, and the iron links shattered, flying through the air like shrapnel, leaving the soldiers in awe. The Sultan was delighted and immediately appointed Badang as his royal champion, the protector of the realm and the symbol of Singapore's dominance. For years, Badang lived a life of luxury, but he found that the weight of the crown's expectations was heavier than any stone he had ever lifted. He spent his days performing feats of strength for visiting dignitaries, becoming a spectacle rather than a man, a prisoner of his own reputation. His fame eventually drew the attention of the king of Kalinga in India, who boasted a champion named Nadi Bijaya, said to be invincible. A challenge was issued, a contest of strength to decide which kingdom truly held the favor of the gods, with the loser's king paying a heavy tribute. Nadi Bijaya arrived on a ship draped in silks. A giant of a man whose muscles were oiled and gleaming, his eyes filled with the arrogance of a winner. The two champions met on the plains of Singapura, the air thick with the heat of the sun and the nervous energy of the watching thousands. The final test was the great stone of the palace, a massive rock that had sat at the edge of the harbor since the time of the ancestors. Nadi Bijaya stepped forward first, his face turning a deep crimson as he gripped the stone, his veins bulging like serpents beneath his skin. With a Herculean effort, he hoisted the rock to his waist, a feat that drew gasps of admiration from the crowd, before he dropped it with a thunderous thud. Then Badang approached. He did not grunt or strain, simply breathed, connecting with the earth beneath his feet and the demon's fire in his blood. He lifted the stone over his head with a single motion, his arms locked in a pose of absolute victory that seemed to defy the very laws of gravity. With a mighty roar, he hurled the boulder across the bay, where it landed in the mouth of the Singapore River, where it remains to this day as a landmark. Nadi Bijaya fell to his knees in defeat, acknowledging that Badang was not merely strong but a force of nature itself. But as the cheers of the people reached a deafening roar, Badang felt a sudden, sharp pang of emptiness in the center of his chest. He realized that while he had won the contest, he had lost the man he used to be, the simple man who appreciated the quiet ripple of the water. The power that made him a hero had also isolated him. People no longer looked at him with love, but with a fear that kept them at a distance. He began to have nightmares of the Buddha, the demon's yellow eyes watching him from the corners of his room, reminding him of the debt he owed. "You are mine," the demon would whisper in his dreams. "Your strength is my chain, and you are bound to the darkness forever." Badang sought out the wisest hermits in the mountains, begging for a way to return the gift and find his peace once more. "The magic of the Buddha is a poison," one hermit told him. "It grows with your pride and fades only when you embrace your own mortality." Badang returned to the palace, but he no longer sought the Sultan's favor. He began to use his strength for the humble, the broken, and the forgotten. He spent his nights helping the poor fishermen repair their boats and hauling heavy stones to build shelters for the homeless without asking for pay. Slowly, the terrifying aura around him began to soften, and the people started to see the man behind the muscles once again. One day, a great storm hit the coast, a typhoon of such ferocity that it threatened to wash the entire city into the sea. The Sultan's palace began to crumble, and a massive seawall was on the verge of collapsing, which would have drowned thousands in their sleep. Badang rushed to the wall, pressing his massive back against the stone as the waves battered him with the force of 1,000 hammers. He stood there for hours, a lone pillar against the rage of the ocean, his muscles screaming and his bones groaning under the pressure. In that moment of absolute struggle, he didn't use the demon's strength for glory. He used it for love, for his people, and for his home. As the storm began to break, Badang felt the demon's essence finally leaving his body, evaporating like mist in the morning sun. He collapsed into the sand, his body shrinking back to its original modest size, his heart beating with a steady human rhythm. The city was saved, but the Strongman was gone. In his place was a tired, aging man with a smile of pure relief on his face. The Sultan tried to give him gold and titles, but Badang refused them all, asking only for a small boat and a simple fishing net. He returned to the river of Siong, where the water was clear and the air was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. He spent the rest of his years as a simple fisherman, but his traps were never empty, for it was said the river itself respected him. He taught the village children that the greatest strength is not in the arms, but in the courage to remain kind in a cruel world. "The boulder I threw will eventually turn to sand," he would tell them, "but a good deed is a monument that lasts forever." As he grew old, his hair turned the color of the river foam, and his eyes regained the sparkle of the youth he had once been. He lived a long life, not as a king or a giant, but as a man who was truly free from the burden of being legendary. On the night of his passing, the villagers say they saw a faint, golden glow over the river, the sound of a peaceful song in the wind. They buried him under the same banyan tree where he had once waited for the thief. A place of shadows turned into a sanctuary of light. His grave became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking not power, but the wisdom to be content with what they have. The story of Badang serves as a timeless reminder that our choices define us far more than our abilities ever could. We often chase the shadows of greatness, forgetting that the sun is already shining on the path right beneath our feet. If you have enjoyed this journey into the heart of Malayan folklore, we invite you to stay a while longer in our world of stories. Every legend we share is a thread in the great tapestry of human experience, connecting us across time and space. Your presence here is what allows these ancient voices to continue echoing in the modern world. And for that, we are grateful. Reflect on the boulders in your own life. What are the things you are trying to lift? And are they worth the weight? Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let go of the heavy things and simply learn to float with the current. We have many more tales of heroes, monsters, and the thin line between them waiting for you in our library. From the frozen north to the tropical south, the stories of our ancestors hold the keys to understanding our own hearts. We hope this narrative has brought you a moment of peace and a spark of inspiration in your busy day. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these legends touch your unique perspective. Don't forget to like this video if you felt the power of Badang's journey, and share it with a friend who might need a reminder of their own inner strength. Thank you for being a part of the Storycraft Studio family. Your support is the heartbeat of everything we create. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a legendary journey. And we will see you in the next story.